And welcome back to a new episode of Dr. Harte TV. I loved getting to see you all last week, especially seeing you in action with the residents, and I just wanted to share a highlight from that. It happened during the house meeting, and our wonderful resident coordinator asked a resident if it would be possible if she could share some good news, and the resident said okay. And she shared that it was her sixth day of sobriety, and everybody clapped for her. It was so amazing to see the smile on that resident's face and to see everyone supporting each other. Now, I know a day at the salon doesn't mean that every woman is clapping for each other all the time, but the thing is that they could have that moment on the way to figuring out those relationships was just really amazing to watch. In short, I got to see all of your amazingness in action that day, and I loved it. But that residence sobriety date got me thinking a little bit. So, on Dr. Hart TV, I've been sharing information with you about traumatic symptoms because I believe that understanding those symptoms and informing our residents how to talk about them is the single most important step in a program of trauma recovery. But right now, you guys aren't just seeing symptoms of trauma, you're seeing symptoms of addiction, or even harder, you're seeing the symptoms that are common in early sobriety, which could be even crazier than seeing somebody's symptoms of addiction. So what I want to do now is take a little pivot from the course that we were on and really expand these talks together about the relationship between substance use and trauma, because at the salon, they're running hand in hand with each other. Also, I know you've got a lot of questions about the harm reduction model and how it works in the long term, and I want to assure you that harm reduction is not about taking away any resources. It's actually about beefing up resources and opening these healing conversations even further. So again, if we could start to see harm reduction not as a loss of a traditional abstinence program, but as a gain of all of these amazing resources to help someone on their journey to sobriety, then we can kind of start to see what the long-term goal is, what kind of our end game is by implementing this kind of model. So today I'm just going to present you with two core ideas about substance use and trauma, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions to reflect on, and then we'll kind of pick up from this trajectory next week. So I want to start with one question for you. When you hear somebody talking about addiction, what's the first thing that you think about? For a lot of us, we think about controlled substances like narcotics, or we might think about alcohol as well. Sometimes when we hear addiction, we think about somebody on the street. Sometimes we think about somebody who might have been in and out of rehab unsuccessfully. But I want to challenge you on that. And maybe you had a different idea, and please share those ideas with me because I would love to hear them of what you think about when you think about what addiction is. But what if we open that conversation? What if we went from addiction is about drugs and alcohol to all of the many things that we could get addicted or consumed by in our lives? So it's possible that when we talk about addiction, we could talk about relationships and love and food and social media and sex and feelings, right? There's sort of a limitless thing because what addiction is it's actually a block for somebody to feel what they're actually feeling in their body in that moment. It's anything that gets in the way of actually being able to be true to yourself. And as we all know, there's a million different ways to do that, right? So, for example, have you ever seen someone who can't put their phone down, even when they're sitting across from you at the table? Or how about a bag of chips that you open just to have a few? What about if you ever watched your best girlfriend say that she was gonna, break up with a partner that didn't treat her, well, but she keeps going back to him, right? Addictions play out, especially for women, in lots of different ways. So I think if we think about all of these ways and we think about how harm reduction can help a woman at every point in all of these different ways, then we start to be talking about something that's really life transforming. It doesn't look like a traditional abstinence program, right? But the conversation is bigger than that, and that's why they look different. So if addiction is a pain that you can't think or talk about, it means that you fill it with something outside of yourself. So I want today, hopefully, to at least open your concept of what addiction is to be habits we have for blocking feelings. The good news is that it's not your job to get anyone sober from any of these different addictions, but it is your job to create opportunities for a woman to recover. So, your first step of doing that is to think about your own personal definition of what addiction is. And, when we're talking about that, when we're talking about all of these different ways that we have of blocking feelings, I don't want you to think about for our residents the times that they've ingested a substance and it's harmed them. Let's open that conversation up even further to how the people around them in their lives have taken substances, the times that somebody who was using alcohol or drugs let them down or harmed them. That is also part of the conversation. And there's also recovery work that we can do around what it means to have had your loved ones be addicted to alcohol and drugs, right? That's another thing that we can work on. So again, for the wrap up, I know this is kind of a curve in the road from the track that we were going down in these sessions, but I want to think about these definitions of addiction as we talk about trauma recovery, right? So why, another question for reflection for you, why would one of our residents have a problem telling someone exactly how she feels? Why would she turn to another alternative instead of talking to somebody about it, right? So email me. I'd like you to think about, email me, ask me any questions that came up for you during today's session. But the one thing I definitely want to see is I want you to write me your own personal definition of what addiction means to you. Send it over to my email address, and I'm going to talk about some of the responses that I get next week. Until then, keep doing what you're doing. You guys are amazing, and I'll see you next time.